Welcome to the Overcoming Sexual Abuse podcast, where you get the tools and inspiration to help you overcome childhood sexual abuse. I'm your host, Christina Anna-Voltson, certified coach, author, and incest survivor, and I'm here to help you heal and live your very best life. I'm joined by Andrea Tokheim, and she shares where she started in her healing journey, the challenges, the milestones, and the twists and turns along the way. You'll be inspired and encouraged and take away some very helpful insights for your own healing journey. Let's start from the beginning. Obviously, we're talking about healing from abuse and neglect. So what the heck happened to you that you had to work with me?
My story is really similar to, I think, a lot of the people that are, coming to this podcast. So I, grew up and experienced sexual abuse, in my home as a child. And then as a teen, I experienced sexual assault by a peer. And this is, something that I know you've said so many times before, Christina, that like sexual abuse doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It always happens in the context of other abuse. So, apart from, the sexual abuse that I, experienced, it was some of the more painful things that I experienced was, emotional neglect, physical neglect, physical abuse, emotional abandonment, things like that, that were a part of my family growing up. I also, another layer that added on to my, my family of origin was we had like a really textbook alcoholic family dynamic with my parents and my siblings and stuff. So that was a whole layer there. So when I came into adulthood, there was a lot there, to like unpack and heal from. And so that's kind of a quick story. Yeah.
Yeah. And would you mind unpacking for somebody not familiar with the dynamics of an alcoholic family, can you describe what you experienced in your family?
Yeah, for sure. So both my parents, they did have, just for starters, they had their own experiences with, trauma as, children and, young adults. And so they came into their marriage with a lot of coping mechanisms, alcohol, drugs. And so when I was young, the dynamic was my dad was the drinker and my mom was, codependent, and she was like his enabler. She she covered for him. She hid, things from us. And then like my sister and I, we kind of took on roles growing up. Like I was like the hero. I was the perfect one. I was the good one. I tried everything I could to like ease the tension in the family by being good and compliant and kind and helpful and getting straight A's, And then my sister, was what sometimes in some of the literature they call the scapegoat, where it was like, she was a little more like, not as compliant as I was. She was like, she would, speak out against things that she didn't agree with or, say what she really thought. And she oftentimes got in trouble for that. So a lot of stuff was like blamed on her, like, oh, you're the troublemaker, stuff like that. So it was this thing where, like my dad's drinking and his addictions were like the central focus of the family, and like keeping everything a secret and like making everything look good, and also just managing like his emotions kind of became like everybody else's focus. Like we all kind of orbited around him and his, inability to cope with life, in a healthy way. So there was just a lot of like, like parentification was another thing too, where like I kind of took on the role of like taking care of my parents. Like I felt responsible for making sure my parents got up in the morning to go to work, making sure, like they remembered this, remembered that. So I took on a lot of like parent-like roles at a really young age, which was really common in a lot of those scenarios. So
yeah,
that's kind of a little slice of it.
Yeah, too common. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And how did that impact what needs of yours got met and what parts were neglected?
Yeah. So that was a huge, huge part of where I learned like how I learned to like find my place in the world. Like, so in order to stay safe and to have some semblance of control in that system, like I learned like, oh, okay. If I just like don't have any needs, if I don't ask for anything, if I don't need anything, if I'm low maintenance, then I can keep the peace, then that dad will be happy with me. Mom will be happy with me, So I learned that like what I wanted was not really a part of the equation. Like my purpose was to like help everybody else in their, situations. So it was really, really difficult because if I had like a desire or a need that went against what other people, wanted or were willing to provide, then it was like, it was considered like, kind of like bad and like, oh, you're being disruptive, you're being too much, you're asking for too much, just like really basic things.
Mm.
So I think the main lesson I learned was like to attune to other people and find out what they need, find out what they want. And, then I could like have that acceptance, have that validation by providing what other people needed. So, and I mean, it worked. I mean, from when I was at a young age, it worked. I was my dad's favorite. I was my grandpa's favorite. Like I was everybody's favorite. Right. But I was completely abandoning myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I, into adulthood, it started to like not work anymore where I was like, oh, like this isn't working,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think that's such a key thing for people to know is that when we're abandoned as kids, then we need, by necessity, just survival to abandon ourselves because we have to choose between that connection and authenticity. And we can't do both because the real self is rejected. And so we need to take on these roles that mean we don't get to be our true selves. And some survivors never come to that place of reconciling with their true selves. And it's so sad.
Mm-hmm. It really is. And it's so, and I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, wow, like I grieve, for like how many years, like I was always what other people needed me to be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that abandoning myself was so easy and so second nature. And to the point where when I did start healing, that was my work. That was the challenge. Those were the challenges, was that prioritizing myself and using my voice when it went against other people's, conveniences or whatever. That was difficult,
Yeah.
And I had to relearn it all over again,
Yes. I was just sharing with another survivor earlier today because she was talking about the same kind of thing she was sharing that she just found herself being like a chameleon in different relationships, okay, what do you need from me? Okay, that's what I'll be. And I can so relate to that. I was telling her that I even went by different names. I was known by Chris mostly while I grew up. And then I went by Christy, and then I also went by Lee, my middle name. And I was just trying on these different, roles and different kind of personas. And I was just like, okay, what's the right one? Because I was just so disconnected from myself and I just wanted to be accepted. So how did that impact your relationships going forward?
Oh man. It was really, really pervasive. I mean, I think just first of all, because I wasn't showing up as my authentic self. I think that was the biggest and most damaging thing, because I was like desperate for other people's validation, approval, acceptance. But at the same time, I wasn't showing them who I really was. You know, I was being whatever I thought they needed to be. Kind of like you said, like indifferent. Cause, you know, I had a really like kind of a diverse like friend group. I had like, you know, like just a bunch of different groups that I would spend time with. And so in each group, I showed up differently. And so nobody really got to know the real me. And then I would be like feel kind of sad and frustrated when I didn't feel like a close connection. But then it was like, well, at the same time, I'm like, I'm not actually even showing up as me, because I was terrified. I was so terrified. The main thought that I had that plagued me for years was, if they only knew who I was, they would reject me. So I have to keep this mask. I have to keep up this facade. I have to present as what I think that they want to see, right? Or else they're going to reject me. There's no way I can show up as the real me. Like, as soon as they find out who I really am, they're going to leave me, right?
Yes.
So that was the biggest thought. So that produced a lot of insecurity. Like, so if people did show me true friendship and love, I was really suspicious of it, you know, like, oh, you only think that because I'm doing such a good job acting. You only think that because, you know, I'm doing such a good job in placating you, and, you know, you don't know the real me, like that type of thing. So there wasn't really opportunity for true connection and true closeness.
Yeah.
You know, because, and there was a lot of, like I used to say like, oh, I have social anxiety. I don't think I had social anxiety, but my brain was just going 100 miles an hour, trying to attune to every person I met and make sure that I was presenting the way they needed me to be. Like, okay, don't say something stupid. Don't do this. Don't do that. Okay, this person likes this. Okay, don't mention that. It was exhausting. It was completely exhausting. It was like, I'm like, no wonder I thought I had social anxiety. I was like, it was just pure exhaustion just being around people, because of all the gymnastics, all the mental and emotional gymnastics that I thought I had to go through to be accepted.
Yes. So exhausting.
Yeah.
And when you kind of alluded to this, but it's like when like genuine love, somebody really just genuinely wants to connect with you and love you and just wants you to be yourself. It's like there's no paradigm for that. And it feels so uncomfortable and so unfamiliar. It's like you said you didn't trust it. And it's like, yeah, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
So what are some other ways that you notice the abuse and the neglect showing up in your life?
On so many levels. I mean, on one like just like a mental health level, my mental health was in not great shape. I had depression, I had anxiety. It was actually diagnosed with PTSD by a couple different therapists. I struggled a lot with OCD. I felt like I was just afraid of everything. Like, I was afraid of trying new things. So that really limited my experiences in life. My sister used to joke with me. She's like, you have like a 5-mile radius, you know? And I was like, yeah, like, what's the problem with that? Like, I stayed in my little bubble, you know, like I was like, okay, I'm comfortable with this and this is what I'm going to do, you know? Let me think. I had a lot of, like health problems because of that too, like a lot of stomach problems and like migraines and just things that are like associated with like basically like suppressing emotions, you know. I felt like I was going through life like numb, like, you know what I mean? Like, I was just like almost like dead inside, where like funny things couldn't really make me laugh, sad things couldn't really make me cry. I was just kind of there, just like existing, you know. And it was not a fun place to be, you know. It was and I always, another thing too, and this kind of goes with the relationship thing, like I always just had this feeling that I was different than everybody, that I was not part of the group, that I was somehow less than or bad or wrong or just somehow separate. from everybody else, no matter if we had the same interests, no matter if I was working so hard to be, just the right way, no matter if everybody was praising me, I always felt out of place. Like I didn't belong. Like like I just wasn't worthy enough to be with like other people in society. Yeah.
Yeah. That shame that you don't belong here, kind of a feeling, that is like the main weapon of abuse and neglect. It's like it puts something on you, like you're undeserving, you're not enough, or you're not good enough, and you don't belong with us. You don't have a right to be treated well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we carry that and that sense of not belonging. And I know for me, like, it's like, okay, if you don't belong in your own family, if you don't feel like you're accepted for who you are there, then where are you going to find it anywhere? Like,
Mm-hmm.
is that it just confirms, yep, there's something fundamentally wrong with me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's such a good point. It's like that devastation of being like, oh, like in your own family, like the people who gave birth to you, you
Mm-hmm.
don't even fit in. That's wild, that's a lot for a child,
Yeah.
that's not able to process that. So yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot for
Yeah.
adults too,
Yeah.
to really just get that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, like how it's so painful
Yeah.
because you don't know that it was the abuse and just the mistreatment
Mm-hmm.
that did
Mm-hmm.
that. You think you were born that way
Right.
and that you were mistreated because they picked up on the same thing that you did, that, oh, yep, there's something wrong with her. She's marked. There's
Mm-hmm.
something defective about her. And so we don't have to treat her well. But you don't know that, no, you weren't born that way. It was the mistreatment that did that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So at what point did you start to heal? Like, how old were you? What was the thing that caused you to kind of seek out that, hey, I need to do something about this? Was there a specific moment, or was it kind of over time? What happened with you?
Yeah. So when I was, let me think, when I was 19, my sister and I started attending a church where the pastor and his wife were both working in counseling, and the pastor was actually working on getting his MFT license, and she and the pastor's wife had been through being raised in an alcoholic family as well. And so when we came to the church, they started getting to know us, and we started sharing with them. And she, found out our family's background, and so she shared with me some of the literature at the time that was available for like adult children of alcoholics, and that was really like my first, I don't know, like exposure to like self-help literature and like putting a name to what I had experienced. And I was just like, whoa, like it just felt so incredible that somebody like saw me. And like when I would read this literature, I was like, has this lady like, did she grow up in my house? How does she know this? Like, how does she know all this stuff? So it was just really, really, it was really, really like, I don't know, just amazing to like actually find, information about what I had been through and what I had experienced, and put a name to what I had experienced. So I did some counseling with the pastor's wife, and just kind of like did like a lot of like self-study type stuff with her. And then we ended up switching churches and kind of, got out of that. And so I kind of continued on, just having a lot of the same symptoms, just kind of was just like, oh, I have anxiety. This is just how it is. Oh, I have depression. It's just how it is. Like just kind of limping along, with my, with my coping mechanisms, just kind of like not really thinking there would be a lot of help, And then, fast forward to like 2019, I, I'm not even really sure what the, I don't know, inciting incident was, but it was just, I just started having this realization that like, I didn't like living like this anymore. I didn't like living with my nervous system in chronic dysregulation. I didn't like being anxious all the time. I didn't like feeling depressed. I didn't like, not, being happy to be alive. Like I didn't like that, and I was like something, I guess maybe my pain had gotten to a place where I was like, I have to do something. I have to do something. So then I started, sought out some, a therapist and found, I ended up having to go through like 5 different therapists to find one that I really was like, okay, this is, what I really am, like this is helpful, So I found a really good therapist. And I did EMDR work. I did cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. I did brain spotting. So I did, a couple different modalities. And that was really helpful. I was able to like just go to the next like level, like where, the information about the alcoholic family dynamics, that was like really helpful to like gain awareness. And then therapy actually gave me like practical tools of like, okay, here's how to work with your emotions, and here's how to take those steps in healing, And then in 2021, I came across OSA and I joined Flourish. And from there, it was like my healing just kind of like, I don't know what the word is, like skyrocketed, where it was like it took like, it was going like at a nice steady pace. And then this just kind of like fast tracked it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And what was it that caused the fast track? Like when you say, yeah, it was fast tracked, what are the milestones that you noticed?
Yeah. So I think the fast tracking was, like, I really, really loved all the things I was learning in therapy and with my therapist. It was just really, really broad. And coming into the OSA community, it was so specific, and it was really addressing like the roots of some of these symptoms that I was having, instead of just addressing each symptom as it would come up. It was kind of like, okay, let's get to the root. And the other thing was that it was very, like very goal driven and like intentional. Like, okay, we're going to work on this first and then this and then this, and this is not to say anything bad about my therapist or anything like that. Like I totally believe in therapy and I had lots of success there, but Flourish was a little bit more, like it had more of an intentional plan. And so I could see like where it was going, where every like module kind of built on another. So it was like, starting at the foundation and then building and building and building until, you were at the place that you wanted to be. So I think that's where that kind of, and there was just this also another level of understanding, since it was with a community of people who had been through the exact same thing that I had been through. And then especially with you, Christina, like, where some of the things that you shared, it was like, oh my gosh, like that happened to me too. Like, oh wow. Like, and it was so incredible to like share in that have that shared experience, which you can't always, have that same type of dynamic, with a personal therapist. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love what Flourish does for people. And just, you're the one who worked it. So kudos to you. What were some of the changes that you noticed in yourself? What did your healing do for you?
So, there were so many changes. So many changes. I feel like one of the first changes that I noticed was just me coming home to myself and being able to prioritize myself and get on my side. I think, like you said, you addressed it before. What happens with abuse is we take those things that happen to us and we interpret it as an accusation that we're this, we're that, we're not good enough. We deserve this type of treatment. And in order to survive, we agree with those accusations and we turn against ourselves. Right.
Yeah.
And so we start saying those things to ourselves. And so one of the biggest things that I noticed was that I was turning towards myself and I was giving myself the care that I didn't get, growing up in that system, and that was revolutionary because even when I first started Flourish, I actually still had a self-abandonment mindset because when I first joined, I was actually holding on to this thought that I was broken, something was wrong with me, and I needed to get fixed. And that's why I was going to therapy, right? That's why I was trying to heal, right? And so even that perspective was I was trying to heal, but through this lens of self-abandonment, right? And so once I was able to get on my own side and actually support myself and accept myself and believe that, I am loved, I am worthy. That's why I'm healing, not I need to heal to be loved, right?
Yes.
I think that really fast tracked it.
That is so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is something that a lot of people, are just so desperate to heal. Like you said, because I want to feel lovable and I need to fix myself to be loved. And that isn't the way it works, because we're just abusing ourselves. You can't heal by abusing yourself, criticizing yourself, telling yourself that you're not lovable. And it's amazing what happens in healing when you do finally get on your own side, when you do have compassion for yourself and to, give yourself the love that you've needed all along. What can happen when you truly love yourself?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And not to say that that's an easy place to get to.
Right. No. And like I said, I started this healing journey with this mindset of I need to be better. I need to get fixed, and that's how I'll finally be accepted. Right. So it's I even started my healing journey, in a kind of a, an off place. But as I healed and as I did the work, it was oh, okay, this is actually why I'm healing. I'm healing because I love myself, because I deserve it, because I'm worthy just for existing.
Yes.
And so I deserve to have a whole life. I deserve to heal, so yeah.
Yeah, that is very powerful. Thanks for sharing that. I know a lot of people can relate to that. That's what brings a lot of people to healing is I need to fix me.
Mm-hmm.
Or really, it's more often it's, hey, you fix me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and I had that too. And that was, I think, that could have been part of that was slowing my progress down in therapy because I did come into it with this idea of okay, I come in the room, I sit there and the therapist fixes me. Mm-hmm. She tells me what to do. She tells me what I'm thinking. She tells me what my thoughts are. She tells me what's in my heart. And then I go out and I'm better somehow. You're healing through osmosis or something. Yeah. I don't know, and so I did have a little bit of frustration, hey, why isn't this working? I came into your office twice a week for 8 months. I want my money back, but it was because it was that shift, and I did, honestly, I will be totally honest. I did start off Flourish like that too. I was yes. Christina, she's got it. She knows all the information. She's going to heal me. And then it was like, hey, wait, I have to do work too, man, but it still got me there. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, whatever gets you in the room, who cares, right? You're here, you're showing up. Yeah. And I think it is a testimony too, to like, there was this part of myself that knew the truth about myself, that knew I was worthy of healing, that knew I was worthy of like, getting rid of these effects of abuse in my life. Yes. And so even if I did have a little bit of a skewed view, there was this part of me that was still like, no, like I need this. I deserve this. I'm doing this, And, so I'm like, whatever gets you in the room, and we'll sort it out later. And you know what I mean? So
yes, totally agree. Yeah. And that is such a common, like, there's no shame in that, because I don't know if I know anybody who didn't have that perspective or that hope that somebody would fix them, because we feel powerless. Abuse Absolutely. Makes us feel powerless. So, all we know is I can't fix me. And so somebody else has to do it. And not that we feel deserving of, the help, but that it just has to be somebody else, because I know it can't be me. And so, and like you said, whatever gets you there, it's okay. It's just okay. So, something I wanted to share, because I like to, I don't know if I've shared with you even, some feedback about my experience. What I've observed is, so in Flourish, it's a community. It's a small community, so you can really get to know each other and feel comfortable. But it's a lab. It's a lab for learning how to do relationship in a healthy way. And one of the things that we get into right away is how to resolve conflict, because it's something that a lot of people fear, because there was no paradigm for that. That didn't happen in dysfunctional family or abusive family. It's just, you're bad and go away until I'm not mad at you anymore. And there was no redemption. And so we talk a lot about rupture and repair. And so one of the things that we encourage is that, just because we have differences doesn't make us wrong. And it doesn't make the other person wrong or bad. It's just, we're different. And so we're going to make meaning in a different way than somebody else does. Somebody could say something and that hurt my feelings, but that wasn't what they meant. Sometimes it was what they meant. But it's a lab for actually not just experiencing rupture and normalizing. We've really have normalized that rupture happens in relationships, that it happens in the closest of relationships, the most loving relationships, because we are different people, and differences are to be celebrated. So, so one of the things that you got really good at is identifying. You have such an amazing way of being in touch with yourself, really being present with, ouch, that didn't feel good. And even just leaning in and questioning, getting curious about, oh, what did you mean by that? And not a lot of people have the courage, get to the place of, here I am, a mentor to you. And you have come to me on multiple occasions and said, hey, this really bothered me. And I respect that so much. I just want to give you, gold stars all over the place for that. And it tells me you care about our relationship. And it also, that isn't where you started. You started practicing with other people in the group and with other people in your life. We call it out in the wild. And you are so, so good at that. And what a difference in where you were, people pleasing and doing and saying what you needed to fit in. And now you really are your own person, and you know what your feelings are, and you know what your thoughts are, and you express them. And I am just so delighted to see that change in you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. That was that was a big, like you talked about milestones earlier. And I think that was a huge milestone for me was, because like in Flourish, we learn about boundaries, we learn about using your voice, et cetera, et cetera. And so I was like, dipping my toes in the water, like practicing this in the wild, as we say, like with coworkers or with, people in my family or whatever. But then it was a whole new thing to say, oh, hey, like this kind of like, what did you mean by that? This kind of bothered me, to someone who I perceived as like, kind of like an authority figure. You know what I mean? Like you. And so I was like, oh gosh, and that was a huge milestone for me to be able to be like, to do that, because it really was like, just like, it was me showing myself that I could show up and speak my truth no matter who I was speaking to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was kind of like, oh, but I really, really want Christina to like me. Like if I say this, she might not like me anymore. And it was like, it was huge. It was that whole thing of like, do I go for authenticity or do I go for, connection, and I didn't want to sacrifice either,
Yeah.
And so that was a huge milestone. And it just showed me you can have both.
Yes.
When you surround yourself with healthy people, you can have both, and you can have authenticity and connection.
Yes.
And I think it was really important to have that disconfirming experience where I brought this thing up and you were like, oh, and you listened and you heard me and you like, we worked it out. It wasn't all the things I imagined it to be. Like I had all these thoughts about, oh, she's going to react this way and she's going to tell me this and she's going to say this. And none of that happened. None of the fortune telling and the, catastrophizing that I did, none of it happened. It actually was like, oh, well, that was pleasant, And so then that gave me the confidence in other relationships, like, oh, okay. And not that it always turns out pleasant, and I have had situations where it's been quite unpleasant. The other person's reaction was not healthy. And I was still able to be there for myself because it was like, oh, like I still feel good about it because I used my voice and I said what I needed to say. And they reacted however, but yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you brought that up because when you're learning these techniques and communication tools and all that, not everybody appreciates that.
Right.
And you do get responses that you did expect, out in the old world. And so you mentioned a couple ways that you took care of yourself that, you said, I'd love to hear, because I think this is a real key for people. What do you do when your feelings are hurt, when you're disappointed by getting a response? When you step out, you use your voice, you express your boundaries. And how do you take care of yourself afterward when you don't get the response that you wanted?
So, I think I definitely start with, like, I'm not sure how to explain it. So before, when I was first healing, I started to be aware of like healthy people and not healthy people, right? And so I had this idea that in order for me to feel safe, I had to, only surround myself with healthy people. And I had to control my external circumstances. Like I could not be around someone who was And I'm not talking about abuse or being someone's like that's super toxic. I'm talking about, how there's just like people who are just difficult, right? They don't always do the things the way you want them to. They don't see eye to eye with you, like that type of a thing. So I thought that like the way that I was going to feel like calm and at ease and safe was to basically never be around difficult people. and never be around people who disagree with me, and never be around people who didn't like my boundaries, like that type of thing. Well, that was exhausting and also not practical. Like you can't do that, right? Like life is full of people who are not, and life there's toxic people and there's abusive people, and sometimes you might run into them, and so my old way of dealing with it was just to like avoid, and only like, associate with like a small amount of people. But when I started widening my circle and realizing so basically I had a realization that, in order for me to feel safe, it does not depend on what other people think about me, how other people treat me, like what other people do. It's my job to like bring safety into myself and make and make myself feel safe, give myself that safety. Right. So I start with a lot of the reparenting stuff, that I learned in therapy and that I learned in Flourish, where, I'm giving myself that secure base of secure attachment, inside of myself, so that I'm not so attached to this person has to behave a certain way for me to feel safe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the starting place. And then, but of course, like there's triggers, I still have raw spots. I still have things that, are not, all the way processed, so of course people are going to bump up against those, when we're, when we're like out and about, and so the main thing is that I do is I will take a step back and really pay attention to what's going on with me. I think a lot of times our first reaction is to like really like focus on the other person's behavior and like what they did and what they're doing wrong and why did they do this? But that kind of keeps us in that dysregulated state. And so one of the main things that I'll really try to do is to just like come back to myself and just check in. Okay, what am I feeling? Okay. And like identify the emotion, where I'm feeling it in my body, what thoughts I'm having about the situation, because a lot of times we tell ourselves a certain thought or story about the behavior that may or may not be true, that may or may not be helpful. So I try to really like, see below the surface emotions of like anger or irritation or frustration, and like what's underneath it. Like, oh, okay, was I feeling embarrassed? Was I feeling shame? Was I feeling, whatever, and then give myself that comfort that whatever it is I'm looking for, and then I can kind of like, once I'm in a regulated state, like, in a calm place, obviously like I'll do some nervous system working on breathing, somatic stuff, just to kind of get my body like back into regulation. And then I can think about, okay, what action steps do I need to take? Like how do I want to handle this? Do I want to say something to this person? Do I want to make a boundary, et cetera. And then just kind of go from there. And of course it depends on like who the person is and like the length of the relationship, et cetera, the safeness of the person, that kind of a thing. But, so yes, I don't know if that answers the question.
Yes, so beautifully.
Okay.
Yes, I think that is such a great example of how you can feel safe with yourself.
Yeah.
And, the way that I put it for myself is I don't need everything to be okay out here. Yeah. I make it okay in here.
Yeah.
And you really got that as well. So I think that's gold right there, because if we don't have that sense of safety within ourselves, then we need to control the environment. We need to control other people and circumstances. And that's one of the reasons why it's so exhausting, just to keep coping.
Oh, so that is one of the things that was a huge thing for me, was I was just exhausted all the time. And because I of course we want to feel safe. Of course we want to feel happy. Of course we want to feel, regulated, and trying to control other people and places and things, and like even like traffic, for Pete's sake. You know what I mean? Like it's impossible, it's futile, and it's exhausting.
Yes.
So it's so much more peaceful to be like, oh wow, like, you know, and it showed me, like, it's kind of funny. It's like this paradox where I like had to let go of control, but it actually showed me how much control I actually did have.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I was basically trying to control the wrong things.
Yes.
I was leaving unattended all these other things that I actually did have a choice and a control over. I was leaving those in the dust, just ignoring them, trying to control other things that are not in my sphere of influence. And so then when I flipped it, I was like, oh, wow, I actually have way more control. I actually have way more power and influence and authority over my own life than I realized. And that was a game changer. That just helped me to really be able to have more confidence and show up more, authentically in life, because I wasn't I didn't feel like so helpless and powerless all the time.
Yes, you are so empowered because of how you take care of yourself.
Yeah.
That's so good. So you've mentioned a few challenges. One of the main ones that you've mentioned is that you thought you needed to fix yourself. And are there any other challenges that you can think of? I mean, of course, the healing journey is full of challenges because life is full of challenges. But is there anything else in particular that you'd like to share?
I would say, like one of the challenges that I did face was that I don't know what you call that, crossroads of realizing, oh, like I actually need to do this work, So I'm someone who loves studying. I love learning. I'm back in college right now. I'm finishing my degree. I'm loving it. Like I love reading. I love just amassing information is like my jam. I'm like, yes, bring it on. I love this. Right. And so that part of healing was no problem for me. I'm like, yes, give me another article about neuroplasticity. Give me another article about boundaries. Absolutely. Right. But then where the rubber meets the road is where we, like, especially in Flourish, you would do these exercises where you do these 30-day challenges, right? And so you'd give us like, for example, when we were learning about the nervous system, I was like, yes, this is great. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm learning. I'm loving all this information. And then comes the 30-day challenge. And I'm like, what is all this? Like, right. So we had to, actually put into practice the things we were learning on a daily basis for 30 days and do the breathing exercises, use the self-soothing plan and work with our nervous system and get a feel for, okay, how does this feel? Okay. Am I feeling more regulated, less regulated, and that was one of my challenges, was shifting from that passive learning mode to actually taking action. And part of it was because I had a low tolerance for frustration. Like I had to build my frustration tolerance. And part of it too was that, those old scripts from childhood where if you don't do it perfectly right away, then you're a failure. So I had to get out of that fixed mindset and get into a growth mindset where I was like, oh, like the journey is the work, it's okay if you don't do it perfectly, just try, and okay, let's try again. Okay. Didn't turn out, right the first time, let's try again, Yes. So I think that was stretching into a growth mindset from having such a fixed, rigid mindset for so many years. That was a challenge because I constantly felt like I was failing because I wasn't getting it perfect on the first try. Mm-hmm. And I think it was so good for me for it not to be perfect on the first try, because especially within the 30-day time frame, because it was finite, right? I could sit there and have all these excuses of oh, well, I'll try tomorrow. If there wasn't a deadline, I would probably just avoid it and then never really progress. But because there was a deadline, it was okay, well, I have to get something down on paper. I have to do something, And so it was really good for me to do it and do it imperfectly and do it messy and not do it air quotes, right way and realized that I was still making progress. You know, so that was one of the challenges that ended up being like a blessing, you know, because it helped me to see like, it's okay. Like just do something. Any action you take is moving the needle. And if it's not perfect, that's okay. Like keep trying, you know? So.
Yes. Yeah. And that's so powerful too. And that is actually another thing that a lot of survivors get stuck in is the learning about healing versus doing the healing work. And I have a podcast episode. It's episode 29. And I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes page because it is I included it in my episode where I did 8 of the biggest mistakes in healing. But I did even more because there's so much more to share on that. But yeah, we use it as a coping method. It's the feeling of, yes, I'm doing something, I'm progressing. But actually, if we're not taking action, we're not actually progressing.
Mm-hmm. And also just knowing that when you take action, it's going to be frustrating. Yeah. I think that's another like myth that I had in my mind. I thought, oh, well, if I have enough information, like I just kept thinking this shouldn't be frustrating. I should just do it effortlessly and easily and perfectly. But it's like, well, this is a brand new concept. Why would I expect myself to do it perfectly? And it's exactly like when we're babies and we're learning to crawl, we're learning to walk. It's frustrating for babies when they're learning to walk. It's that they're using muscles for the very first time. They're using synapses that are brand new, you know? And it's like that when we're learning these things, you know? So, I think that was one of the big things is like, just, it's okay if it's frustrating. It's new. Of course it's frustrating. Your brain has never done this before. Of course it's frustrating, you know? So.
Yes. And yeah, to allow the messy action. Mm-hmm. And it is so good. And you shared this, and I so agree with it, that it's actually good because it does challenge those preconceived ideas that we have that only perfect gets us to moving forward. And that isn't the case. And it also helps us to be more comfortable with our imperfections, to be more accepting, and to even celebrate. Yeah, okay, I stood up today and I fell on my face. Yay for me. Like that's progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you even, in one of the challenges that you talked to us about recently, you had asked us to ask someone a favor and not give all the like, oh, it's okay if you can't do it, you know, like give them the easy way out. Right.
Yeah.
And so, and it's so funny, like just the difference that I see from myself now, you know, from back when I first started, where now, so I did this challenge, and the first 2 times that I went to go ask this person a favor, I wasn't able to do it without giving like oh, it's okay, blah, 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 you don't need to do it. And I was like, man, but like the difference now is I didn't feel shame about it. I didn't beat myself up. I was like, yeah, it's okay. And I kind of laughed about it. I was like, oh my gosh, like, wow, okay. Like I started out with these really good intentions and I was like laughing. I was like, okay. So then I was like, I'm going to try again, right? Did the same thing the second time. And I was like, dang it. I was like, okay. And then, but so like the difference in me now is that I have this thing where I'm like, no, I'm going to try again. Like I want to do this. I want to grow. And I didn't feel bad. I didn't feel like I failed. I didn't even feel like I did anything wrong. It was just like, okay, like this is information that this is a really ingrained habit and let's try again. And so then by the third try, guess what? I got it. And it was great. So
yes,
like, you know,
awesome.
Anyway, so it's just like that whole difference. Whereas before, like maybe 2 years ago, I would have beat myself up. I would have felt like I was a failure. I would have been like, oh, you're not far along. You're not far along enough in your journey. Like, how could you, like, how could you not do something so simple? Like, I would really have had a lot of thoughts, and that wasn't going on at all. So, yeah.
Yes. And I just want to share what the challenge was in case anybody wants to play along, because it was so full of insight. And I loved what you shared And so the challenge was to ask someone for a favor, someone you feel uncomfortable asking. Like I played along too, and I just regularly ask Don for favors all the time, my husband. And so I knew it couldn't be him, but it was a real challenge too, because it's something I have been practicing, asking for my needs. And it was a challenge to find someone that, or asking for a thing that I actually did feel uncomfortable about, but I did. And so the challenge is ask somebody for something you feel uncomfortable about, and don't say, and this is for homework, and don't say, and it's totally fine if you say no. Don't pay attention to if you're trying to fix their feelings, if you're trying to solve their discomfort, as though you know what they're feeling, and pay attention to your discomfort, like what kind of things you do to solve that discomfort. And then ask the question, and then pay attention to, and then just don't say anything, and just wait for a response, and pay attention to what you tell yourself about it. Like Andrea, you just said, you really, even though you didn't do what you intended to do, you essentially you did it imperfectly, but you didn't beat yourself up for it.
Mm-hmm.
You took care of yourself in the midst of that, and you encouraged yourself, and you practiced again.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the kind of thing, it gives us insight when we do something like that. First of all, it's practice stepping outside of our comfort zone, which is a fantastic skill to master. And also it gives us insight about how we perceive ourselves. Oh, I'm such a burden. Oh, I don't want to trouble somebody. Oh, I have to remind them of what I did for them. So pay attention to the voices in your head and what you're telling yourself, because it really helps you to get to know yourself better. And it can challenge you to take care of yourself even better. So what are some key insights you've gained?
I just in general, I'm looking at my life now, and looking where I've come from. And I'm just I'm living a life that I never thought was possible, and I'm living a life where I am waking up and I'm excited, for what the day is going to bring. I'm excited to, be alive. I'm excited to experience life. I'm excited, and I'm feeling like joy and happiness. And I didn't think that was possible, like 5 years ago. I'm living a life where I feel empowered. I feel I really feel and know that I have agency in my own life, that I can take care of myself. I can, protect myself. I can show up how I need to. And I have agency in my life. I can affect my life in positive ways, and I can create the life that I'm wanting, and I'm literally in the process of doing that. I'm just seeing all these things where before I kind of would just sit back and just hope and wish and just oh, wouldn't that be so great if my life could be like this? Wouldn't that be so great if I didn't have anxiety? Wouldn't that be so great if I, had, joy or whatever? And now I'm actually making it happen in my life. And it's incredible. And I didn't know that I had that in me, I didn't know that I could do that, and, so that's one thing where I feel so much more empowered to where if I don't like something in my life, if something is not working for me, guess what? I can change it. I'm like, wow, like that's amazing. Like I can make choices, you know, and it kind of goes back to that when we release control of those things that we never had control over and were never intended to have control over. When we let go of that and we actually start managing and being a good steward of the things that are in our control and that are our responsibility, it's like everything just opens up and you're just like, oh, wow, like this is what it's meant to be like, you know? And another huge insight was that like community is so helpful. Like that this healing needs to be done in community, you know. And I actually, when I first started my healing journey, I actually did not believe that. I was just like, nope, I'm not sharing this stuff with anybody. It's just me and my therapist. That's it, you know. And but as I have gone through Flourish and, you know, being in this healing community, I have seen that doing this healing process with healthy and safe people in a moderated environment was just unbelievable. Like it helped me. It was like you said, it was like a lab of learning how to do relationships for the first time in a healthy way. And that was like so beneficial for me. Like it was just incredible, you know, where it got me, you know, to be able to open up and learn to trust and learn to say, oh, it's okay to be myself and people still accept me, you know, and you know, so it was just incredible.
I'm so glad it was such a good experience for you.
Yeah.
You really took the tools and you ran with it. So what are you most proud of in what you've accomplished in getting your life back and getting your power and, you know, the healing that you have experienced? What are you most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of just being on my own side and being there for myself. And, you know, I know that sounds kind of like, I don't know, trite or whatever, but it was really the self of like, you know, being abandoned by your parents is one thing. And then to abandon yourself is like a whole nother level of pain, you know? And so like coming back to myself and giving myself that assurance that like, I'm always going to be there for myself. I'm always going to be on my side. I'm always going to take care of myself. I think that is just, I think one of my like greatest accomplishments, because that is like the basis for me doing all this other stuff. You know what I mean? Like, and going out and learning all these other things and having agency in my life. Just really, being able to, say what I really think and to really show up authentically. You know, even in the face of like other people that might not agree with me, other people that might not, you know, think I'm right, or, you know, they might criticize me or whatever. I think that was a huge accomplishment. And it's still ongoing, of course. I'm always like, you know, wanting to grow more and more in that and go to the next level in that awareness and in that growth. Yeah, I just feel like, cause that was just such a, people pleasing and like being a chameleon and like doing like abandoning myself for other people's comfort was just such a habit in my life. And it was so painful and it was causing so many problems that I think, finally being able to like show up as myself and be my authentic self, even if other people don't like it, even if it makes other people uncomfortable, and not trying to manage their tension over it. You know what I mean? Like just this being who I am and letting other people be who they are, you know? It was just for me such a huge accomplishment because it just kind of broke that bondage that was in my life. You know, yes. I felt like I was trapped. I felt like I was always trapped by other people's perception of me and ideas about me and what they thought of me and if they approved of me. And it was like being in prison. It was, so there was like a freedom and being like, you know, this is who I am. So.
Yes. Well, you certainly have a lot to be proud of. And I'm certainly proud of you. You've brought us a lot of insights and tips, some specific steps that others can follow, and a lot of encouragement and inspiration too. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so delighted to talk with you and hear the details of your healing journey.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was really, really awesome. I really, really appreciate it. And I want people to know, like, people, that have experienced sexual abuse, and even people that haven't, even people that are, just struggling with a lot of these same things. And maybe that's not necessarily related to actual abuse, like that healing is possible, that it's not some far off, like lofty dream, like, oh, like that certain people are cut out for and certain people aren't. Like anybody can do this work. Like we have it inside of us, I do think we need like good tools and good information, but this is accessible to anybody at any point in time, no matter where you are in your journey. Like there's nobody that's too far gone. There's nobody that's too broken, or like it's available to everybody.
Beautifully said. Well, thanks for joining me today. I'm bringing you lots more on healing and boundaries and self-care and family dysfunction and so much more. So be sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of it.